For all its beauty and splendor, the wilderness can be a cruel teacher. Going into the backcountry of Death Valley in the middle of summer underprepared is reckless. One of the hottest places on Earth, DV is a place where the sun doesn't just burn, it kills. Where 120 degrees is normal, and where shade and water aren't just helpful, they're the only things keeping you alive. If you roll out here with a half-baked plan, a couple bottles of water, and blind faith in your GPS, you're not on an adventure. You're writing your own obituary. Let's venture back to the savage wilderness where survival is earned, not given. This is Outdoor Disasters. For Alicia and Carlos Sanchez, their Death Valley trip would be catastrophic. Alicia Sanchez had spent most of her life caring for others. A traveling nurse from Ohio, she moved across the country wherever her services were needed. But in 2009, she was ready for something else. Time with her son and a little adventure. This summer he will be traveling with me. He is super excited and tells me where he wants to go. It's so funny. He thinks it's so cool that he gets to go all over the US with me, she wrote in a Facebook post. Alicia's life was rooted in movement, Ohio, San Antonio. But in the summer of 2009, she picked Las Vegas, a temporary home base close to the natural beauty of the American Southwest, Zion, the Grand Canyon, and Death Valley. She wanted to take Carlos somewhere unforgettable, so she chose Death Valley. There was something eerie and captivating about Death Valley, a place that defied life and dared visitors to enter its scorched kingdom. For Alicia, it was an adventure for her and Carlos, a chance to break from routine. She packed carefully, 24 16-ounce bottles of water, sandwiches, Pop-Tarts, her little dachshund, and all the casual optimism that often accompanies a road trip. She told different family members varying things about the plan. Some heard they'd camp in the south. Others were told she'd visit the famous Ubehaba crater or Scotty's castle in the north. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal, but in the desert, uncertainty can be lethal, and that lack of a firm plan set the stage for a disaster. On the morning of August 1st, 2009, Alicia, Carlos, and their dog headed out to the hottest place on Earth. With no map, she relied on the GPS. Her GPS, trying to offer the fastest route, guided her on the adventure. Carlos had never seen the desert before, and Alicia had always been curious about it. The heat, the stillness, the extreme environment, it drew her in. Using her GPS, Alicia followed its instructions. The turnoff from the paved highway came and went with barely a sign, down a dirt track known as Owl Hole Spring Road. It was barely a road at all, a rough gravel path that wound through the southern edge of Death Valley, brushing against the China Lake Naval Weapons Center. This route wasn't on any visitor map. It required four-wheel drive, and it led nowhere tourists ever went. Alicia followed the device's voice prompts without hesitation. The gravel road narrowed as they drove south, further into the Owl's Head Mountains, passing through the invisible boundary of the China Lake Naval Weapons Center. It was rugged land, desolate, burned beige by the sun, and vast in a way that made you feel like you'd dropped off the map. About 10 miles in, the Jeep jolted violently. A rock had slashed the tire wall. Alicia pulled over, sweat already collecting at her temples. Carlos sat quietly in the back seat, fanning himself. Alicia was prepared. She changed the tire quickly. Years of travel had made her self-reliant. She left the ruined tire and a water bottle by the roadside, thinking it might be useful to someone else or herself on the way back. With the spare in place, she pressed on, navigating mile after mile of desolate trail, still trusting the GPS. The road became more treacherous. Eventually, it reached a junction where the trail made a sharp right, a turn clearly marked on official park maps, but the GPS didn't say to turn right. Instead, it suggested a hard left, a path that didn't appear on the map and hadn't been maintained in years. Alicia hesitated. Then, trusting the device over her instincts, she turned left. Within a few miles, the terrain turned rougher, narrower, more hostile. Jagged rocks lined the narrow passage. It was less a road than a memory of one. And then, the Jeep lurched violently and sank forward, the front wheels swallowed by a collapsed animal burrow, a hidden hole impossible to see until it was too late. Alicia gunned the engine, rocked the wheel, but it was no use. The Jeep was stuck. They were stranded. It was mid-afternoon. Temperatures were already nearing 120 degrees, and there was no cell signal. She and Carlos would wait by the car. They had water. They had food. Help would come. It had to. The sun bore down like a punishment. Temperatures hovered around 115 degrees. The car offered minimal relief, but for the time being they had gas and used the air conditioner sparingly. Alicia rationed the water carefully. A few sips for herself, a few for Carlos, and a bit for the dog. The sandwiches were still fresh in their cooler, the Pop-Tarts a treat for later. She still believed they'd be found soon, maybe even today. Carlos was still in good spirits. He played with the dog. Alicia made up stories to keep him entertained. That night, they curled up in the back seat, trying to ignore the creeping fear neither of them could voice. They stayed close to the Jeep. That night, the desert cooled quickly, and Alicia bundled Carlos in blankets from the trunk. The next morning, she knew she had to take action. Alicia tried climbing a nearby ridge to get a signal on her phone, but it was no use. No bars, no towers, just silence. From the top she could see for miles. Endless ridges and valleys in sun-bleached desolation. No roads, no people. Carlos was tired but still hopeful. He played with the dog and munched on Pop-Tarts like it was an unusual camping trip. Alicia kept smiling for him, but inside, panic was beginning to grow. They were going through the 24 bottles of water fast. Even with the air conditioner running, she gave Carlos the lion's share and told herself she could handle less. 1 bottle for Carlos, a few sips for herself, a little for the dog. She was used to long shifts without breaks, long days without meals. She could manage. She stayed calm. She had to. Carlos looked to her for safety and she wasn't about to let him down. But the food was running out. The sandwiches would spoil in the heat. The Pop-Tarts were all they had left. By now, Alicia knew the gravity of their situation. Stranded deep in the heart of Death Valley, supplies vanishing with every passing hour, the desert was turning hostile. And what began as a carefree family adventure was teetering on the edge of catastrophe. As the days went by, the gas in the Jeep ran out. No more air conditioner. The food was nearly gone as well. The dog was panting profusely. And Carlos had become quiet now, lying down more often, sweating despite the shade of the car. His skin felt hot to the touch. Alicia forced herself to try the ridge again, climbing higher this time, shoes slipping on loose rocks. Still nothing. No signal. She screamed until her throat was raw, but the desert answered only with wind. When she returned to the car, a feeling of dread consumed her as she looked at her son. At first it was the vomiting, sudden, violent draining what little strength he had left. Sweat poured off his small body in waves, soaking his shirt, beading across his forehead, only to vanish into the scorching desert air. His skin was burning hot, his breathing shallow. Alicia recognized the signs immediately. As a nurse, she'd seen hyperthermia before, but never like this, never this personal. Children are especially vulnerable. Their bodies heat up faster, and they're less equipped to cool themselves down. Even with the bulk of their remaining water going to him, it wasn't enough. Out here, it was never going to be enough. Death Valley isn't just hot, it's oppressive. The kind of heat that seeps into your bones and drains the will to move, to think, to survive. It didn't matter how careful Alicia had been. The desert was taking over now, and Carlos was slipping away. Back in Ohio, Alicia's family was growing frantic. They hadn't heard from her in days. When they called the hospital in Las Vegas, she was due for work that day and did not come in. On Wednesday, August 5th, 2009, they called the Las Vegas police, who referred them to California. But with no exact location, there was only so much they could do. Wednesday night, search efforts began out in the north. Rangers searched the area near Scotty's Castle and Ubeheba Crater, the spots Alicia had first mentioned. but there was no sign of her Jeep. Meanwhile, Alicia and Carlos's situation was dire. They were now completely out of water and the heat never let up, teetering on 120 degrees daily. That Wednesday morning, something in Carlos had changed. The cheerful little boy now lay quietly in the back seat, his face flushed, his eyes glassy. He wasn't sweating anymore. That scared Alicia the most. In the early stages, she'd seen it, the sweating, the thirst, the sunburn blooming across his cheeks. But now, the sweat was gone. The air inside the Jeep was suffocating. The sun turned the metal into an oven. Alicia cracked the doors and draped shirts across the windows to block the light, but the heat didn't care. It reached in, pulled the energy from their bodies, cooked them slowly, silently. Carlos started talking nonsense, slurred, jumbled sentences. It was heat stroke now. Alicia had seen it before in patients, marathon runners, construction workers, but not like this. Not in her own child. With no IV, cold compresses or help, her throat clenched. She stroked his hair, kissed his forehead, but she knew it was not looking good for Carlos. She climbed the ridge one last time, dragging her limbs like anchors. The rocks tore at her shoes. She held her phone up to the sky, arm trembling, desperate for a signal. There was nothing. Nothing but heat and silence. When she made it back to the Jeep, Carlos was unconscious. She cradled him in her arms. She held him for hours, refusing to let go, even as his skin cooled and his chest fell still. The wind dragged across the sand, dry and indifferent. She made no sound. There was none left to make. Her body was failing, blistered and brittle, barely clinging to breath. She sat motionless, not out of lack of strength, but because she was devastated. Her son was gone. The desert had taken him without mercy. And now, with nothing but the silence and the dog beside her, she waited. In the aching stillness, she knew the desert wasn't done. Death would soon come for her too. Thursday morning, the search expanded. A rescue helicopter from China Lake was deployed. Rangers scanned vast areas of desert. Search and rescue teams were mobilized. In the north of the park, helicopters scoured areas near Scotty's Castle and Ubahiba Crater, as those were the last places she had mentioned, but they found no trace of the Jeep. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. But then, sometime just after midday on Thursday, a break. As a ranger vehicle crept slowly down the remote stretch of Owl Hole Spring Road, a glint caught the eye of one of the officers. It was a tire, shredded, abandoned, and beside it, a single water bottle. They followed the faint, barely visible tracks on the dirt road, winding deeper into the treacherous terrain, each mile more remote than the last. The road narrowed, and then they saw it, a flash of sunlight on metal, half buried in the earth, the windows streaked with dust, the vehicle sagging in the pit that had trapped it days earlier. Inside the Jeep, Alicia was battered by desert and tragedy. Her eyes, sunken and hollow, fluttered open at the sound of tires crunching gravel. She didn't register relief, not yet, only confusion, a moment of disbelief. Then she heard it, the low rumble of an engine foreign in a place that had offered only silence. With what little strength she had left, Alicia pushed open the door. Her legs shook beneath her. She stumbled forward, barefoot and staggering, and raised one trembling arm into the air. Help had come, but not in time. As the ranger's vehicle rolled to a stop, Alicia collapsed. Not in joy, not in gratitude, but in pure, devastating grief. She had been found, but Carlos had not made it. The rangers rushed to her side, poured water gently into her mouth. Another radioed for a medevac. Their faces were tight with urgency, but they didn't need to ask what had happened. They looked in the back seat of the Jeep and froze. There, wrapped in a blanket, lay Carlos, still peaceful, untouched by the chaos that had taken him. The dog, frightened and gaunt, sat quietly at his feet, refusing to move. The rangers removed Alicia from the scene first. Every second counted. She was placed in the helicopter and flown to Sunrise Hospital in Las Vegas, where doctors would later describe her condition as critical but stable. Carlos's body was recovered and flown with his mother. The dog, loyal and miraculously alive, was taken in by San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputies. In the days to come, he would be fed, cleaned, and later reunited with Alicia. In places like Death Valley, there are no second chances. One wrong turn becomes a trap. One vague plan becomes a disaster. This was not a case of reckless thrill-seeking. It was a case of trusting the wrong thing, not telling enough people the right thing, and underestimating what the desert really is. A place that will kill you quietly, long before help even knows where to look. What began as a joyful road trip between a mother and her son became a harrowing lesson in how quickly nature humbles us, how even the best intentions and loving hearts can be overtaken by silence, heat, and time. Even in the harshest landscape imaginable, in the final hours of his life, Carlos was not alone. He was held, he was loved, and because of that, he will not be forgotten. Neither will Alicia, a mother who fought with everything and survived, and whose pain now stands as a warning, a memorial, and a cautionary tale. But this isn't just a story about getting lost in the desert. It's about how love endures, even when the body fails. That kind of love. A mother's love doesn't vanish, it echoes. GPS navigation should never be your only lifeline. 24 bottles of water might sound like a lot. It's not. Telling family, "I'm headed to Death Valley," isn't a plan. It's a search grid the size of Connecticut. Every year, people enter the wilderness with confidence and a cooler, and every year some of them never come back. Never underestimate the wild. Death Valley is a land of extremes, a place that doesn't forgive mistakes. GPS is not enough. Clear plans, physical maps, and telling people exactly where you're going can mean the difference between rescue and tragedy. Bring more than enough water. In that heat, survival isn't just about having supplies, it's about having too many. It's about preparing for the detour, the wrong turn, the flat tire no one sees coming. Technology can fail you, but human instinct, that feeling in your gut, often doesn't. Sometimes the road less traveled isn't romantic, it's dangerous. If you're stranded in a vehicle in the desert, stay with your vehicle. It's easier to spot from the air than a person on foot and provides limited but critical shelter. Conserve water by staying in the shade and avoiding exertion during peak heat. Ration supplies, but don't stop drinking entirely. Dehydration kills faster than starvation. Drink with care, but drink when needed. Crack windows slightly for ventilation, but avoid opening doors unnecessarily to keep the interior cooler. Use reflective materials, sunshades, foil, even CDs, to signal aircraft or distant rescuers. If you must leave to get help, leave a clear note in the vehicle with your direction and time of departure. Most importantly, tell someone your exact route and destination before you go. It could save you from an outdoor disaster. If you've made it this far, please consider clicking those subscribe and like buttons. Want more outdoor disasters content? Check out these videos I believe you'll enjoy. Thank you for watching.